All right, and Dave Meltzer is joining us to talk about Brian Pillman, someone who he was fairly close to back then in right before his passing. And Dave, this is probably a really bad memory for you, but the day of that Badd Blood pay-per-view, how do you get the news of what happened to Brian?
I was watching the pregame show and Vince McMahon announced it. So that's how I got. Nobody called me ahead of time. I called his wife right after, but yeah, nobody called to tell me. And I just watched Vince, and it was pretty surreal. I just remember screaming.
And so, as this show is going on, are you watching the show, or are you trying to find more information about what's going on?
I was watching the show, and I was so detached from the show it wasn't even funny, and all the wrestlers were too, because I remember watching the show kind of in a haze, and every wrestler's performing like they're in a haze. And then Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, but more Shawn, performed like he was like incredible. It was like, I was like, how can you do this? Everybody else is like, can't perform at any level because they're so depressed, and you're out there and you can perform at like the greatest level in the world, which is a testament to him.
Yeah.
But I also thought that it was funny because when I'm watching him do this and I'm going like, I'm kind of like in a weird haze myself, and I'm going like, I think this is the best cage match I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say that anymore, but on that day I did. I think it's the best cage match I've ever seen. How can he do this? And I mean, it's like, I know he's good. That's not the point. But how can he do this on this day? And it was kind of like, man, is he like he doesn't even care, Yeah. But I mean, he I mean, you could argue that like it shows how professional he was, that he could get through it and give you that kind of a match on that show.
So it's interesting because if you didn't watch the pre-show and you only started watching the pay-per-view with the first match, the guys come into the ring and then Vince just kind of throws it out there like that, we got this news, and it's like he's in this moment of like he has to say this, and then it's like we got to just move on to the match, or else we're going to ruin this match by keep talking about Brian. And then he comes back, it's like maybe a couple of matches later, and he makes this like statement. He says something to the effect of, whether it's recreational or prescription drug abuse, it's a problem in all. And I thought he was going to say wrestling, but he goes sports and also entertainment. I wonder if he caught himself, but it just seemed like he was going to say wrestling. And I was like thinking like, after hearing all the stories about Shawn Michaels like passing out and guys passing out and Triple H having to put Shawn in his room, like this is like a real thing that happens where one of the guys dies on his watch, and he's got this, I guess he's got a locker room of, not all guys, obviously, but some guys who also have the same problem, including the guy who he's about to make the top star in the company. Like, I was like just wondering, like, gosh, what is going through Vince's head as he's calling the show? And, one of the guys dies, and he's got other guys who have these problems. Like, it was crazy to think about going, in that time, like all the stuff that was happening.
Yeah, I don't know that he was, and it could be forgiven that like, nobody expects that type of a situation. I mean, it happened there, it kept happening later, but you really don't expect that. So it's pretty hard to be prepared for it because, like deaths in the ring every now and then happened, but like, and I mean, there were other overdoses, but usually they weren't the day of the pay-per-view when you find out, and then that whole story of how, they like Brian's not there. Brian and Brett comes in, and Brett's always late, right? And they figured that Brian's with Brett because Brian's not there, and Brett comes in and he doesn't have Brian with him, and then it's like they try to get a hold of Brian and they can't, and then they call the hotel. I think it was Cornette who calls the hotel, and they tell him that Brian's dead, and that the police are there and everything like that, and so that's how they actually first found out.
Wow. when you do your issue, I mean, you sort of had to perform like Shawn Michaels performed, because I mean, I don't, how long until you start writing the bio? It couldn't have been that long, right?
The next day, maybe that night. I mean, and then I went to the funeral, and then I came back and wrote a second one. The second story was probably better than the first, but yeah, they were 2 long stories. Yeah, that was. It was. I don't remember that much about it, but I remember. I remember the second one more than the first one. But I knew, it's like it wasn't that hard because, in a sense, like I'd known him from when he, very shortly after he started. So it was like 10 years, 11 years. And so, I mean, I knew his background. I probably knew more about him than any wrestler that was around, except for, maybe, Terry Funk or Ric Flair or something like that were, giant stars or whatever. So it wasn't, I knew his career. I practically lived through his career, through every aspect of his career. So I knew his thoughts during his career and everything like that. So it was hard emotionally to do, but it wasn't that hard in the sense that it's not like I had to look up anything. It's like it was all in my memory pretty clear, every move that he made, especially then. So, yeah, I wouldn't say it was hard to do, and I probably did it in a day. So, but that's, I did that. That's what I did all the time, really.